Here we go.
Do it.
Okay, cool.
Here we go.
Welcome back to Coffin Talkin', where we unravel the mysteries, embrace the peculiar, and find humor in the unconventional world of funerals and death. Welcome back. Sorry about that week break, but we're here now.
Yeah, I have to say, where we find humor, it's not always humorous. And we're going to talk about one of those today. But it's not always humorous. No.
Uh-oh.
But interesting nonetheless. So,
okay.
How was your week, Paul?
It was good. How was your week?
Good.
This week at work was so busy. I even had a meeting on Saturday. And I know that's nothing to you.
Oh, no.
But it was awful.
Well, I hate working Saturdays. And so when I was planning on a day off on Saturday and I go in, like yesterday, I spent almost 7 hours on a day I expected to have completely free. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, how do you deal with that? Oh my gosh.
It's become happenstance now. It's just normal.
You got to put your foot down and say no more.
That's what the FL always wants me to do. The fictitious Lisa. You're looking at me like, what? So anyway, what else is happening?
That's what the FL says?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She says, put your foot down?
Yeah. But it's not. Death is an interesting creature because when someone dies, families expect to be regardless of the day of week, sometimes regardless of time. And so you do what you can to accommodate. It's not always good, but yeah.
I guess so. Well, you took a trip.
I did.
How was that?
I was out of town in Ohio visiting the grandchildren and 2 children. And it was great.
We just ship them out there. See you next week. Yeah. See you next time in Ohio.
Yeah. So when, and I don't get to go to Ohio too often. Mom's been there a couple of times more than I have, but yeah, it's always nice to be with kids, and it was a great event, great step in our oldest granddaughter's life. And so we wanted to be a part of it. So we were out there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So fun. So fun.
Mm-hmm. And I learned all sorts of new statements from grandkids and feelings and thoughts.
You called me afterwards with a list of isms that the grandkids had shared that are just so unhinged and out of left field.
No, they're so funny.
They are so funny.
Coffiners, you have to know the oldest is 8. And so every one of our grandchildren.
She's crazy. But she's so fun.
She's crazy fun. But she
really is.
Anyway, she's the oldest of 8. And so, yeah, it was just good to be there with her for that couple of days.
Yes. So fun.
So that's where I was, and it was good. I'm sorry, Coffiners, that we tried to get an episode before I left, but it just didn't work out. And so here we are. Forgive us.
Well, let's just put the coffins out of their misery.
Yeah, don't throw us into a coffin that seals.
Or a crypt.
Or what?
A crypt.
Or a crypt. Those would be crazy things. Oh, yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But let's jump in.
Okay.
The moment everyone's been waiting for. Let's be frank.
Thanks. So today I wanted to share a story with you that I was going through the notes in my book, and I looked at it and I thought, do I want to share this one? But I think I will, because it's important to note what exactly transpires in the funeral industry and how important or how sometimes dangerous chemicals can be. This story revolves around an individual that we had working for us at the time, and he had other obligations, but his main obligation at the very beginning, and didn't matter how long it took him, if it took him all day, that was his job, was to go through 3 different newspapers in the area, and to go through those newspapers and find out exactly if there's any articles regarding the funeral industry at all. So his obligation,
not specifically the business you were working at, but just funeral industry.
Funeral industry, correct. And so his obligation was to see if there was any newsworthy things happening within the funeral industry in that area within the scope of those 3 papers. So he came to, and the organization that I worked for had a board, and then then there was individuals on site that would answer to the board, and then we would answer to the individual member or managers on site. So
Okay.
he immediately went to the board with these pieces of information. He bypassed everybody, and that was his job. He was supposed to do this. And so he went and he noticed that on one particular occasion, I guess about page 4 in the newspaper itself, was mentioned that there was a mortuary that had been broken into. And there were some things that were stolen. It didn't go into detail as far as what was being stolen. The second day came around. Same thing happened at another facility. Another facility was broken into, and again mentioned that miscellaneous items had been stolen. Now, Holly, if I told you that someone was breaking into the mortuary, what would you think they'd be doing?
I would either think it was kids, like saying,
Okay.
"Ooh, dare, let's go and break
Okay.
into the mortuary."
All right.
Or, I mean, this might just come from your spoiler, but I would think they would steal embalming fluids, the
Okay.
chemicals there.
Okay. All right. But most people, when they think of break-ins to mortuaries, are thinking about harvesting organs or stealing organs.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And so that becomes and so when these 2 articles had come up and this gentleman had taken it to the board and said, hey, we have a rash of thefts that are taking place within this area, and it's not being specific, but I think they're going after organs. That was his thought.
Yeah.
And so at the time, we had an alarm system on the outside of the building, only on exterior doors, nothing interior. So if you got inside, you had rights to be in the building. That meant that you had access to our cooler. It had a padlock on it, but it was a combination lock, and so they changed it to a key lock. And they just thought, well, let's change it to a key lock, and only 2 people in the building will have keys to this during business hours. And so they thought, okay, great, it's been taken care of. So that's how fast the business I worked for acted on what they were seeing transpire in other areas of the county. Day 4 came around. Again, another mortuary had been hit. And it had been, again, no specifics. Thank you. No specificity. Yeah, I see you had to look up in order to say that. So yes, I can't think about it. Yeah, but there were no specifics mentioned again. And so this guy again thought that it was again the individuals wanting to come in and just take organs. So a couple of days went by, nothing more. Nothing else happened. No mention of any stealings, no break-ins, no thefts of any kind, excepting for one mortuary had a funeral coach stolen, which they were able to recover pretty quick, because how hard is it to find a missing hearse, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you see it down the street and yeah, okay, we found it. So anyway, almost 2 months later, we get a notification, and it's interesting because in our building at the time, and we ran on pagers. So, and for those of you that are coffiners that may not know what a pager is, it's just something you clipped on your belt, and if someone needed to reach you, then the pager would go off with a number to call back, or it would give you specific information. And so one particular evening, I had the pager, and a pager went off, said there's a break-in, or your exterior alarm is going off.
Oh.
And I hurried, called everyone that I knew of that would have access to the building, thinking they had gone on a first call or a death call and were back at the building that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
And so and no one was on any type of a call. And so I thought, okay, so we're getting broken into.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all of these memories came back from all these other articles that were actually being shared with others in that group meeting with the board. And I thought, okay, I can call the cops. So I did call the cops, and I rushed to the mortuary myself. I was about 20 minutes away. So I drove to the mortuary, and it was as quiet as could be. I drove around the building, and I looked at the door that had actually set the alarm or sent the alarm notification. And it did look like it had been forced entered. And so I just parked there waiting for the cops to arrive, thinking that if someone is still in the building, Well, I don't want to confront them.
I don't want to go in. Yeah.
I'll just wait until they leave. So in this particular building, as you go through this door, you go through the door, and then to the right is where we kept a cupboard, and I call it a closet of all the embalming fluids. And on the outside of the door, it said chemicals within, something like that, and said caution, in big words, caution, chemicals located within.
Yeah.
And so when the cops came in, we all walked through the building, and I couldn't see anything missing. And then we walked by this door as we were leaving, and the door was ajar. And I thought, oh no. And I looked at the cop and I said, that door shouldn't be ajar. And he said, well, what's in there? I said, just our embalming fluids and chemicals. I don't know why it would be open. And so opened it up, and there were 2 cases of formaldehyde-based embalming fluid missing.
Oh.
And so I looked at the cops and I said, well, we're missing 2 cases of fluid. And the one cop at that point said, well, you're not the only mortuary that has had fluid stolen. And now,
so now you know it's not organs.
Now in my mind, I now know what they're after. And so I'm thinking to myself, what in the world are you wanting chemicals for, or embalming fluid? And so apparently what the cops had told us was that young men, young women were having parties, and they were soaking the tips of cigarettes in formaldehyde and then smoking them.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so I thought, oh, wow, that's not good, because number one, formaldehyde-based fluid is a carcinogen. So it's
What's
not
that?
going to be, it causes cancer. And if you ingest it, it will kill you.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so I said to the cops, I said, we should be probably putting some sort of a warning, or having some sort of a warning on these chemical boxes, so that if they're stolen, people will be able to, like they have in like packages of cigarettes.
Yeah.
You're not, if you're pregnant or whatever else, you shouldn't be smoking. You shouldn't be smoking anyway. But they have some sort of a message stating that if you ingest this, it's harmful or fatal if swallowed. And then there's little precautions as far as what you can do to curb that if you want. So anyway, we were talking about that. What was your question before I continue?
I was going to ask, what does formaldehyde do in the embalming process?
So the formaldehyde is a preservative. So it is a chemical base fluid that allows the tissues to not decompose as rapidly as they would normally. So that's what provides, when you have an open casket viewing, chances are the places will require you to have a embalming, because that allows a transfer of body fluids, in this case blood, out of the body with the replacement of this chemical fluid, which will then, without use of a better term, pickle. It will pickle your innards, or your vascular system, to the point where it's almost stopping any slow or any major decomposition that could occur. So it doesn't stop the decomposition, but it will definitely slow it. So that's what the formaldehyde base, and I don't know if coffiners need more example of that than not, but that's what it does. That's what it's for. So I mentioned to the officers, and I said, this could kill them, whoever took it. And one of the officers said, yeah, we've been kind of concerned about that ourselves. And I was thinking back in my mind, well, if there's this much fluid, and not everybody that they broke into had fluid stolen, but they couldn't find anything else that was taken. So obviously they were trying for the fluid. They were
looking for it.
Yeah, they didn't always get it. And so when I'm thinking back in my mind, how in the world would someone know that the chemicals were that close to that door? Do you see what I'm saying? Because we had like 6-7 doors around the building. Why would you choose that door?
Yeah.
And it was still open to the parking lot. So you could still see that door from major thoroughfare of people. Why would you choose that door instead of one in the back? And the only thing I could think of was that maybe a couple of weeks prior to the break-in into our facility there, is we had a small little tour group that wanted to come through the mortuary, just kind of see what the workings was of a mortuary. And so I thought back, and I thought, well, maybe they saw that door and just kind of case the joint, so to speak. And then you
Right.
turn around and say, okay, well, that's the door I want to come in if I'm going to grab some fluid, because they would notice that there was no lock on that door. It was just a turn handle. There was no key on it. There was no deadbolt, nothing, which was our fault, which has changed, of course, shortly thereafter. But having witnessed that, I just thought it had to have been a member of that small little tour group that came through. And so as I was thinking about this, the officer said, do you have any ideas? And I said, yeah, there was a small group that came through our facility a couple of weeks prior to tonight. And they were asking about what all the procedures were, the mortuary and where. And then I said, they wanted to know what's behind that door. And of course, it's identified. It's like, this is our safe. Open it up and there's the money, right? But
Right.
it's had identified as the fluid room. And this is, well, where is that not next to your embalming room? And a lot of people don't know this, but formaldehyde puts off chemicals or fumes. And so if you have a leaky bottle and you want it away from as many people as possible so that it doesn't affect either the ventilation system or the individuals that might be there for a service in the building. So
can the fumes hurt you?
The fumes are what hurt you.
Oh.
If you're like when you're embalming, what did it do to me? My mouth or my sense of taste and smell? I don't have it anymore since I never embalmed with a respirator. Still don't, which is unfortunate, but that's just been my choice.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah, that's just been my choice.
What a shame.
So yeah, the fumes are what can cause, and usually the fumes are heavy. And so, just a little piece of information, the fumes are so heavy that all ventilation and prep rooms are on floor level. So because the fumes are so heavy, they hit the floor first, and depending upon how many fumes you have, they'll start building in the room. So as long as you have a ventilation system that's ground level or near the floor, that can suck those fumes out immediately, so you don't have any real major issues with breathing, or I guess mainly breathing of the fumes. So going back to the story about, I want to say it was relatively quick, probably about 2 weeks later, the officers called us to a scene, and they asked if we wouldn't mind coming in and just identifying cases of fluid. And I said, oh, yeah. So they found them, right? That's what we were guessing.
Yeah, that's what you're thinking.
And so I went in, and it was me, because that was, of course, I was the one that called the cops to begin with, and were talking to them, so they would recognize one name kept all through the reports. And so I went in and I talked to this detective, and he said, yeah, we have the fluids in the back there, and we know it's yours, because what we do is we stamp property of and the name of mortuary on the box.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when they saw the box, they said, okay, well, we obviously know where this one belongs. So they called us. We took possession of it. And I said, so where did you find it? And he said, well, it was on the street. It was on the corner. A homeless man was using it as a chair. So there were 2 cases of fluid that he was sitting on, panhandling on the corner of the street. And I guess a cop had driven by and just looked at the boxes and realized that was probably part of a case that had been opened months before.
Right.
And so I went on ahead. We were talking with the officer, and I said, well, okay. He said, were these full cases? And I said, yes. So 6 bottles were missing. I told him, I said, well, there's 6 bottles missing. He said, what do you think that means? I said, I have no idea.
You're the cop.
Investigate.
Detect.
Yeah. So I just said, thanks, sign some paperwork. And he released the information or the boxes to me. I took him back to the mortuary. And about, I'm guessing about a month later, we get this call on 2 youth, and we got both youth. And they came into our facility, and we had done the embalming and stuff. But we always see the death certificates before they're actually issued to the family or to anyone else that might be interested in having a death certificate.
How they died. Yeah.
So do you know how they died?
I'm guessing ingestion of formaldehyde.
Ingestion. And so I looked at that, and I called the officer, and I said, hey, we just got 2 individuals that were found passed away, and the death certificate show they died from formaldehyde ingestion. I said, I'd like to know if you want me to, I'm sorry, I've been struggling with a cold. So I said, I don't know if you want me to hold and send you a death certificate, copy of the death certificate, so that you have access to what was caused, where he was living, where they were living, so you might be able to see what's happening with anyone else. So he said, yeah, if you could do that, that would be great. This is good news. Good news. 2 people passing away, and it's good news. So I sent him the information, and then about a week later, he called me and he said, we followed up on your information on the addresses of where these individuals lived. And they had found out that another individual of this home had taken and smoked 2 or 3 cigarettes soaked in formaldehyde. They too passed away. And another individual that was with that person was in a coma in the hospital because they too had actually smoked the cigarettes together. And the parents of the second home found their son. He was the one that had passed away, and the other one was in a coma. So their son had passed away, but the other guy was still in the room, and they couldn't figure out what was happening. All it looked like was they were smoking, right?
Right.
And so when they went in and found the cigarettes, so not the next day, but probably 2 days following the discovery of that, there was a big article, no longer page 3, page 4, page 5, page 1, youth finding formaldehyde a new high. And so then in that article, they had addressed the fact that they needed to stop smoking or immersing cigarettes in formaldehyde, because I think that was the title. But anyway, they had to stop immersing their cigarettes in formaldehyde because it was a carcinogen and could kill you.
Yeah.
And then they went into details as far as what they were able to see in their own investigation, as far as 2 people being passed away through the work of the death. And this is one of the reasons why it's important on the death certificates, for a little bit of investigation. If you see it as a funeral director, see something fishy, the medical examiner might pick up on it. But if these kids were to be buried, which I think they were, it would never go through the eyes of the medical examiner.
Right.
They would have passed away at the hospital, and that's what the hospital staff figured. And what wouldn't you be asking? Where did you get the formaldehyde?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I have some questions as to how everything transpired, but just as a reminder to those of you that are coffiners and are interested in what takes place within the funeral home, realize that there are chemicals that are used in the funeral home that are deadly and and can create major harm to individuals if they misuse them. So this is just a reminder episode, and it's something that we should all take into consideration with regards to the importance of safety, regardless of what you're doing, where you're at. And you should never use chemicals, drugs, anything in a different way than what they're intended. So that's that story for today, Holly.
Wow.
Kind of
that's
sad
so
one.
Sad.
It is sad in the long run.
I wonder because they were kids, right? Like 20 something, or how old were they?
Or younger. The 2 that we had come through our facility were right around the 20-year-old mark.
Oh, yeah. That's just awful. I feel so horrible about that, but also I don't know what gets in their minds, their brains, that they're like, let's do this.
Yeah, that is true. And
like,
when you
how
start
did they even get that idea?
See, that's what we were thinking. How would someone, like, and at that point there was no TikTok, there was no Instagram, there was nothing like what we have today. How would you even think about immersing a cigarette in formaldehyde?
Yeah. And I guess maybe that's the point, is they're thinking of like, I don't know, what chemicals can we use to like make our high better or something.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, there are chemicals at funeral homes where they keep dead people.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And then the one thing too is that formaldehyde can, depending upon the chemical mix, can be extremely flammable as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you stick a flame to, and
when you light it on fire,
they had to have had it dried out.
Right.
But even when you have it flamed up or when you burn it, geez, those fumes. When you have chemical spills from railroad trains, when they tip over and they have chemicals in there, what do they evacuate areas?
They evacuate everyone for miles.
If they catch fires, fire, it doesn't matter if they're burning. Look at East Palestine. Let's burn it. So when they burn it, it just creates more problems because now it goes up in smoke form as opposed to liquid form.
Right.
And creates more problem for people.
And it like gets in the ground too, and awful. Yeah, that's just horrible.
It is. So anyway, I don't mean to be a downer today, but we are talking coffins and coffin talking. So this is one of those unfortunate episodes where it does occur and where deaths occur, and you don't think about that happening, that type of a death, but it does. It does and has happened.
It does happen. So do the fumes cause cancer, or is it only if it's ingested?
Fumes cause cancer. And it's usually pulmonary cancer.
So, why haven't you been wearing a respirator? Have you been checked? Have you gone to the doctor?
I have been checked, Holly. And so right now, your lungs are great. I say it's what's keeping me away from West Nile virus. So whatever's in there is combating whatever I have else going on. But no, it's been forever. And, most places, well, not most, but all places are required to have respirators, personal protection gear, eye goggles, gloves, smocks, but it's up to the employee to wear them.
Right.
So I could never sue in this case, past employer for the ailments that I'm having because it was my choice.
Right.
I mean, everything was there. All I had to do was utilize it, but I didn't.
And maybe this is a cautionary tale too. If you work in a funeral home or around any chemicals that you're going to be possibly ingesting the fumes of, then take proper precautions.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true.
Oh, that's awful.
It is. And it's sad
don't
to think
do
about
drugs.
and do.
Just don't.
Yeah, don't
don't do drugs. If you have an addiction to drugs, just get help. And if you don't start.
Yeah.
Oh, we're watching Breaking Bad right now.
Oh.
And so many people are addicted to drugs.
Yep.
And guess what? They're awful for you. And sometimes people die.
What was that?
That's what I have to say.
It's and you know what? That in Breaking Bad, people die from manufacturing the drug.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's the fume. There's the fume issue again. Or explosions. Explosions happen. Yeah.
Just everything all around. It's bad.
It is. So
makes for great TV.
Cautionary tale.
Cautionary tale. Oh, geez. Well, yeah. I guess that's that one.
That is.
Thanks.
Well, I guess that's that one.
I guess that's it. Thanks for joining us again, Coffiners.
Thanks, Coffiners.
We'll see you next week.
Take care. Have a good week. Be safe.